Hello everybody and welcome to another special tutorial episode of Banished. Today I'm actually going to be looking at food. Now I've actually taken the city of, what was it before, Konk, yes I think that's what it's called, and it's grown a bit, it's stable now and I can actually do some experimentation on this save game, which is what I'm doing now. So yeah, there are a few things that we've got to deal with in this game. First things first is gatherers. Basically, how much in a perfect situation do they produce? Now you'll notice, because I'm not sure actually how much effects trees have on them. I know trees do have an effect. There is only one slight problem with this circle, and that's up there. You'll notice that I've got 4 Forester's Lodge, which do not intrude at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this for a couple of years. And then I'm going to turn on these foresters, and as they plant, and it's going to be plant only, we're going to see what effect that has over the next few years. Because it takes, what, 4, I think, years for a forest to grow. I think that's what I calculated it as before. I will also point out, to make this, you know, as good as possible, that they're all quite... well, they're close as a reason. This is basically the perfect scenario. You can't really get much further. Didn't even put roads in because I know that has an effect. So we're going to run this gatherer's huts for, let's say, the next 2 years. This is your basic starting forest, which has been removed of all its stone and iron. So this is a basic starting forest. So, you know, nothing's been done to it. Then we're going to see what effect the trees have on it. And then we're going to have a look at some other food things. We're going to do the same for hunting and see what happens there. Okay, so that's the drill. Off we go. I'll see you in 2 years. Right, as you can see in year 2, all that adds up to 2,772 pieces of food in total, with 4 different kinds of food, which makes it a good like starting area, starting thing for your people. Now these circles that are around, like the gatherer's hut, the forester's hut, etc., have a radius. If you look at the way I work this out, is going from the centre to the edge, and it was about, and hang on, let's try that again, where it can actually go. It has a radius of about 30, okay, and I'm going to have to take that off very quickly because I should not have done that. Doesn't matter, I'm actually cancelling this world after this. Right, so that means that this circle using pi r squared is 2,862 blocks in total around here, which means that on a yearly basis the average is 0.9 food per square in this whole thing. So per square it's a pretty low amount of food. However, food per worker is 654.5 food per worker, which means that if you've got only a few people, you really want to be using gatherer's huts because they produce a high amount of food per worker. However, if you're low on space, like for example small maps, mountainous maps, they produce very little food per square. Okay, we're gonna go back to we're gonna go back in time to the spring of 68, I think, is where we start in this particular game. And I'm going to turn on these foresters' huts, and we're going to see what happens in that time period. Okay, year 3 is 2,046. Interesting to note that the amount of food produced is going down as the amount of trees produced goes up. At the end of next year we should have full tree coverage, and then we can do a final year estimate for years 5 and 6 together. Okay, so we've got some very interesting results. This current year's food is 1,826. So year upon year, it's gone down from 2,552 to 1,826. I honestly don't know why that is. It could be that the trees are taking up the spots where food could spawn, maybe? I don't know. But that gives you an average of 2,128.5 pieces of food every year for 4 years, which gives you less than the normal forest, which was 0.9 food per square. It's now 0.7 food per square, and 654.5 food per worker to 532 food per worker. I'm going to leave this running now that it's got a full full coverage. I'm going to leave this running for another 2 years and take notes, and we'll see if the trend continues. Okay, just colour me confused. Year 5 was 2,200, so it was picking up, and then year 6 was 1,654. So apparently you seem to get a time of feast and then a famine, no matter what. But what I can conclusively conclude from my results is that having a natural woodlands seems to outweigh having a perfect planted woodlands. The only thing that I'm going to do now is to try and see if actually having woods at all has any significant effect. Okay, it's winter. I'm going to set this gatherer's hut off now, but as you can see, we've taken out most of the trees. Now, this should tell us once and for all if trees have an effect or not. So we're going to enable work on that gatherer's hut, and hopefully in 2 years' time we'll be able to make a definite decision. Yeah, I don't really think we need to go on with this test, because if you look at this screen, this hasn't moved since late spring. They've collected all the resources, and nothing has obviously nothing has grown back. So yes, trees do make a difference, but it seems that whilst they are making a difference, it's better to have possibly a forester's hut next to it, so it just keeps the trees thinned out, encourages growth, and doesn't destroy the natural wasteland. Wasteland environment is the word I meant. Okay, for the next part of this food-based adventure, I just wanted to take a quick look at fishing docks. People don't like fishing docks, which is, you know, in some respects it's reasonable, some respects not so much. Okay, I have a lot of fishing docks. You can see I've got 100 fishermen, because they're really, really good. I'm going to go from my best to my worst to my best. So let's quickly center the view on this one. This one is a really, really poor example of a fishing hut. You can see it's only got a little bit of water. Slightly better is this one. You can see it's got a sort of wider piece of water and it goes out the back. Okay, that gets about 500 fish in a season. This next one is about 700. As you can see, it's got a slight dip on either side. What would have been better if I'd managed to shift it slightly back into here, but that would have cut off quite a bit of this area. But that's a 700 fish a season. This one, next one here, as you can see, it's sort of at a right angle. This one is a 900 fish sort of area. This is an excellent fishing source. As you can see, it's on a nice spitty, jutty out piece of land, and everything goes back, so it's got more of the water. It's 1,000. So is this one. Same deal, but because it goes slightly back further here, you get the food from there. And we're getting into the good ones now. Yeah, you can see it all debates on much water. This one is much better because it's also got this water at the back here. If you can get them on these little pieces of land, that's great. But the best place I found, this one gets me 1,500 a season. You can see how much water it is. So it is definitely based on how much water you can find. I am going to quickly compare the data for an excellent fishing hut and an average fishing hut. Okay, I used the data of these two fishing huts here as a good one, which is about 50% water, and an excellent one, which is about 75%-ish water in that circle. The good hut over here produces 1,080 food, which is 135 food per square of land used, and 270 food per worker. This one is the excellent one is 1,485 food, which is 185.6 food per square used, and 371.25 food per worker. So fishing huts, a lot of people diss fishing huts because they don't really understand them, but next to gatherers huts, they're probably one of your best sources of food. Okay, this is the winter. I've gone back to my gatherer's place and I've replaced it with a hunting cabin. Should be important to note that the hunting cabin, I think, is actually slightly larger. Yeah, it's 33 rather than 30. Yeah, 33. So the radius is going to be slightly different when I do my calculations. So what we're going to do is we're going to see if having a forest actually affects the amount of deer that's caught each year. Right, so with the hunting lodge, I've left this running for 5 years. You get between, right, you get either from this scenario 1,000 food per year or 1,200 food per year, which brings you to an average of 1,080 food per year. We've got another fire. I've had 2 fires already. We're having problems with fires in this scenario at the moment. Fortunately, none around this area. Which brings you to 0.3 food per square, so it's really bad. It's even worse than the gatherer's hut. But the food per worker is 360, so it's not that bad. People are wondering if having a forest actually affects it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart from the beginning, strip out all the trees and run it for a couple of years and see if that makes a difference, because if it doesn't make a difference, you can put these pretty much anywhere. If it doesn't make a difference, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a few problems. So I'll be right back with that scenario. Well, I'll show you the end of that scenario. I'll strip everything out and then come back with what I've got. Okay, I think it's a fairly safe bet to say that having trees makes absolutely no difference. So it doesn't matter if you put them in a stripped down area or not. Hunting cabins will produce basically the same amount of food regardless. You might get an extra 200 if you're lucky that year, but you can pretty much safely bet if the area is clear, you'll get about 1,000. If it's not clear, sucks to be you. Okay, the last thing we've got to look at is farming and pastures. Okay, so I'm starting my fields and I've got a 7x7, which is the maximum you can have, and only have 1 worker. And I've got a 4x4, which is 14x14, 15x15? No, 14x14 field. People tend to want to go for the big fields, but you can get, you know, pretty much just as much out of the smaller fields, and you're more likely to harvest the smaller fields. If you look, I've got people like pretty much right next door to the field where they work. I've got 3 storage barns for people to actually do what they're supposed to do. I've chosen wheat as it is a crop that is harvested early. Please remember that Seconconk is a harsh start, so it's got a harsh weather conditions, so you got a problem. I might, well, I say I might. I'm going to do squash as well, because squash tends to last in the field quite a long time. So I'm going to do, hopefully, 2 years, so I can do the averages, and hopefully we'll get a full yield each time from both. And then I'm going to do, not farming, pastures. Okay. By late spring, both fields have been planted. It's interesting to note that the larger field got planted before the smaller field, maybe because they know that how long it takes to, the game knows how long it takes to crop and how long each one takes to plant. Only 2 people actually planted this field. I am going to wait till they're 100% and then they're going to harvest, and not before, because, you know, logic and stuff. So hopefully we should get a full harvesting of this one. Okay, the large crop field has started harvesting now, so has the smaller crop field. I'm curious just to see what's going to happen, because autumn in this area starts getting pretty gnarly. So what was right, so for the 7x7, 333 harvested at the very beginning of autumn. So not a lot of crops. So if the winter turns nasty, the small field is already harvested. Okay, and this isn't a 14x14, it's a 15x15. Okay, slightly interesting results. The 7x7 field, as you can see, got 334, which translates to 6.8 food per square and 334 food per person. The larger 15x15 field was 1,595, which translates to 7.8 food per square and 398 food per person. So if you can get a decent harvesting operation going, like I've got here, with people living right next door and barns right next door, you are going to get a better yield if you choose the big ones. However, if you've got a harsh climate and you don't have an ideal gathering setup, you want to go with the smaller fields because they get harvested sooner. And the food isn't that much different, to be honest, between the two. We're going to do the same thing again with the squash, which is a late harvesting crop. So we're going to see what effect winter has on crop yields. Once again, the small field seems to be harvesting first and will take a much shorter time than the long field. Imagine if you have 4 individual labourers doing the same thing, and it's done. So yeah, I would definitely suggest that 164 squash. So actually squash seems to be a slightly better bet. Let's see how let's see how the other field does with amount of food, because that's quite interesting. Okay, we're at late autumn and they still haven't finished taking out those crops. So whilst they have per square about the same amount of people they would have if they had a smaller field, they finish slower. So you're more likely to lose things to, oh, and by the way, we have scarlet fever. You're more likely to lose people to that than you are to anything else. And it produces about the same amount of each crop. Okay, so yeah, smaller fields work better if you want your crops in faster and them to make more likely to survive, because the amount per person is negligible. Okay, with chickens, we've produced a total of 822 food, which is a 20x20 square, which means that is nearly 2 food per square and 411 food per person working on that field. I'm going to switch this out with cows and sheep, and I will give you the details of cows next. Okay, with the cattle you can see that they produce 1,000 food in total each year. That makes it 1.2 food per square and 500 food per worker, and we just have sheep to go and then we're done. Okay, the sheep are actually slightly better than, you know, everything else animal wise. They produce, as you can see, 1,200 per year, and also with the wool that gives them 3 food per square and 600 food per worker. Okay, I am going to make a little summary and then hopefully we can wrap this up with a nice neat bow and get some recommendations. Okay, thanks to this little area I've come up with the top 3 foods per worker and the top 3 foods per square. Now, we're going to go number 3 for the top 3 foods per worker, which is the early years when you've got lots of land and you can do lots of expanding. Top per worker is fishing. Which produces about 375 fish if you've got a decent site per person. Number 2 is, believe it or not, sheep. Sheep produce the most food per worker. They produce 600 food per worker. If you've got sheep in early years, definitely get sheep. But you know what, you can then follow it by cows and chickens because they're sort of much of a muchness close together. And then gatherers. Number 1 for forested, it's forested or unforested. So top 1 is gatherers, second 1 is sheep, third 1 is fishing. Okay, so those are your early year ones if you can get animals. Right, so for your later years when land is scarce, the top 3 food per square are number 3 sheep, believe it or not, with 3 food per square. So these guys hit both lists which I wasn't expecting. Sheep probably your key animal resource, and they provide wool for your coats. So definitely, once you can get sheep, get sheep. They're the best hands down animal you can get. These big fields are number 2 on the list, so 15 by 15 square fields at 7.8 food per square. And once again, fishing. Fishing produce a minimum of 175 food per square, so long as you have a decent location. So before you put down anything else, put down your fishing docks to make sure that they get the decent location, and then build around those. So I've been Zombie Cleo. This has been really long to do. Class dismissed.